Hello, everybody. You should be able to hear us. What's going on, guys?
Hello.
We have a special guest today. Who's that?
Yeah.
Hello?
Welcome.
Who are you? New YouTube, who dis?
This is me, Mr. Brass. Nice to be here today.
How you doing?
Good to take a break, and because usually I'm always talking to just fellow men in my own shows, so it's great to be able to chat with some more women.
Well, we're happy to have you here. I'm excited. We as most of our viewers and ourselves are aware, 4 of us are women, and not everybody is aware of this. It's something that's in contention. But we tend to talk about a lot of the women perspective of things, whether that be, I don't know, what do we talk about? Relationships, whether it be parenting. A lot of it comes from a female point of view. Now, we try to be pretty open-ended in, like, general advice or whatever we're talking about, but it's good to have a dude come in here, a friendo come in here and give us a little bit of a different perspective, and then maybe we can learn some things, maybe they can learn some things, and we're just gonna have a grand old time.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting, because, you know, I like hearing from the female perspective myself when it comes to certain political issues, along with, you know, just general issues altogether. I'm very interested. Unlike, you know, I find many people in my sort of sphere that I hang out with, I do notice that there is tunnel vision, and I try to, well, I fall into that sometimes. I do try to break out of it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think it's really easy to get caught in, like, a little bit of groupthink. So sometimes it's good to branch out and bring somebody else in who can have those conversations in like, not a dumpster fire manner once in a while. Yeah. Although dumpster fires are fun, it's just once in a while if you legitimately want to have a conversation or expand your perspective of things. Sometimes it's good to reach out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I believe, you know, in today's chat we were going to go over domestic violence, particularly.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how the struggles that women have and the struggles that men have are different but considerably similar, I've noticed. But I think that there's not a whole lot of focus that goes on to we're all people. So I thought it'd be a good idea to bring a guy in to talk about a little bit more from their perspective.
Yeah.
Especially with some of the stuff that's come out recently.
Yeah, with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
If you guys don't know what that's about, go check out my other videos.
I like to remind you that men that go through domestic abuse, they tend to not be Johnny Depp.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the answer is that
advantage.
Anybody.
They also
can
tend
go
to
through
not
that.
record it either, and get actual evidence that people are still ignoring.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I know, which is even more ridiculous when you consider the fact that he has recordings.
The thing that kills me is, okay, for a couple things, is one, anybody can be the victim of abuse. If there's any takeaway from that, it's that it can be anybody. Doesn't matter what your status is. The other thing that is the takeaway is that if these were one of the best things to come out of having everybody having phones is everybody's got a little recorder. If you ever feel like things aren't okay or you're feeling unsure of yourself, just hit the fucking record button, man. You don't have to do anything with it. It's not like you have to take it to a news outlet.
Well, yeah.
But it's funny, like, it's not, like, I guess it's not easy for men, because for so long they have been told that they are supposed to be the tough ones, and they're supposed to be the ones who should take it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be surprised if it doesn't come to their mind that that they're desensitized to what abuse is.
Yeah.
Let's just say, and they won't realize when they're in the thick of it, oh, this is something not right, I should not let this happen to me, or I should do something about it, or record it.
Or I should be able to do something about it myself, and I shouldn't need to reach out for any help.
Yeah. So like we say for any female domestic abuse survivor, I would say the best thing would be to talk to other people about it. If you're in doubt, talk to someone, and possibly
Reach out.
someone who will understand your situation, because there's some, you have friends who might go like, man, dude, what are you talking about? She's just a tiny person or something like that. How can she, hit you or something like that? Yeah, give it back to her. Someone might
I'm
say.
a tiny
It's not like
person. I
it
could
would
beat the
actually
shit out of a
hurt.
couple people.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean-
tiny. That doesn't mean anything. I'm spooky.
Yeah. Yeah, but there are these perceptions that have been created, right?
Yeah.
The gender roles and the gender norms, and people are like, okay, she's tiny, she can't do this to you, or even like, oh, so you can't handle her? You know, that kind of thing that always pops up, and you're like,
Yeah.
are you serious?
Well, I mean, I've always said this, like in a relationship, if you have to handle someone, you're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with an animal.
Exactly, yeah.
Because you handle a dog and you handle a horse, you shouldn't have to handle humans.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
a really good point.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
fair.
The language that people use, I feel that's actually very important. I like
It
that you have
tends
that
to
out
lend a
balance.
lot to what's going on,
point.
more so than I think people realize a lot of the time when you actually start breaking down what people are, the words people are using and why they're using those kinds of words. You're handling a human being because you can't communicate with them, or you have to physically detach yourself from this person.
Yeah, if you have to walk on there's this expression, right? If you have to walk on eggshells around a certain person, yeah, you might not want to interact with that person or get away from that person, actually. Yeah.
I mean, it's, in my particular case, because, I can, when I heard about the Johnny Depp story initially, I was, for one, I was great. I was sort of happy because I was thinking, finally, perhaps now we're gonna get, the men's side of, the abuse story, and, because we don't typically hear about that side of the story, so I'm thinking maybe it's going to take Johnny Depp in order to get that message out there.
I would be curious to, so I saw somebody on Twitter say something they said that, oh, this person's a Johnny Depp apologist. Can anybody shed some light on what the hell a Johnny Depp apologist is?
Someone that loves his movies and that will die to defend them.
But is it defend
They
them,
started-
or is it like defend them
Okay,
from
hold on, I'll
what? He
just
didn't
type it.
do anything. I don't get it.
Personally, to be serious, I think it sort of comes across the same thing as a rape apologist or a domestic abuse apologist.
Yeah, they're apologizing. So it's saying that,
Okay,
oh,
alright,
because
so
he's
what they
Johnny
have
Depp,
started-
you're saying he didn't do it, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's being said that in a rush to vindicate Johnny Depp, his fans have become apologists for abuse. So maybe that's being saying is that, but that's wrong. Again, if you're
Right, that's not what's
apologizing
going
for
on.
abuse, you're apologizing for abuse. You're not vindicating someone if you're apologizing for abuse. So maybe there's some people who who don't realize that they are ending up apologizing for abuse, but actually they should be defending Johnny Depp. There's a big line of demarcation, because of course we know that, I don't know, yeah.
Johnny
If
Depp
someone
doesn't
else
need to be
wants to chime in on
defended
that.
because he hasn't done anything as far as anybody can tell. Yet.
Yeah.
I mean, to be
Yeah,
quite
again, yeah. So,
with me personally, Chess knows this because I've told her on Twitter before about my own experience, because I'm actually a domestic abuse survivor myself. At the hands of an ex-girlfriend. So,
sorry, mate.
I do know the sort of games that get played down. Now, a typical thing that there are some myths that go out there. Yeah.
Broadcast has been interrupted.
Ooh,
Oh,
please
yeah.
hold.
So,
He's got a woman
Yeah.
in the kitchen making him a sandwich.
Uh-oh.
that was my sister. She got some pizza.
Oh, and I'm hungry. I'm even more hungry. Damn it!
Yeah, but so,
Yeah.
I know the game and how it's really played on the domestic abuse card.
Mhm.
A tip and what people. I was talking to Chess. I sent her a little message about the reasons why men stay in abusive relationships.
Mhm.
And she said it's remarkably similar to the reasons why why women stay in abusive relationships.
Yeah.
And I say, yeah, and that is true, but I say you have to add another dimension to this where men don't really have places to go.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. The amount of resources that need to be allocated. There's a good number of women houses. We're starting to see more for trans people, which is good. But there's really not enough resources dedicated to men. So what might be good is to dedicate ones to people. Dedicate them to everybody, and then start making specialized ones for people who need that specification, because not everybody does. Some women will be traumatized to the point of they can't be around men. Some men, I'm sure, will be traumatized to the point where they don't feel comfortable being around any women. And for those people, they need that extra step. They need the ones to be secluded. But not every survivor, not every victim is like that. So starting out with people and then growing from there to then start doing, okay, this one specifically for women if you have this problem. This one specifically for trans people if you have this problem. This one is specifically for gay people if you have this problem. This one specifically... So that way if you're... Or who knows, if you're... whatever, different race, if you need something like that. It's to help these victims. It's not about whether or not... Oh, well, now this straight person doesn't feel comfortable being around any gay person. Well, maybe they don't. And that's not homophobic if they've been abused.
They're dickheads in gay community too. They're dickheads in every
It's about
section
people.
of society.
It's about people.
That's all I always say. It doesn't matter your race, your gender, your sexuality, whatever. It does not matter. There are assholes everywhere in every fraction of society. So when people, there was this one time, if Shesh remembers, I called a woman an asshole, and that woman went off and she was like, how dare you call a fellow woman an asshole? I'm like, your gender does not stop you from being an asshole.
What?
They expect a level of, what's the word? Pandering almost?
Yeah.
Sisterhood. There's another word for that.
Tribalism.
Tribalism, yeah.
Just tribalism, yes, yeah.
Tribalism is just a key thing. I mean, tribalism is a good thing to a certain extent if it's not good or bad, but and especially nowadays with the media, it's gotten way out of hand.
Well, I mean, that's the thing though, is, we can't improve until we stop doing that type of stuff. For example, I mean, people in the LGBT Q+ community sometimes won't call out like a gay person or
please tell me you're gonna go
for
like
example,
with
a trans person that's being
Jessica
an asshole.
Yaniv. Are we gonna go down the Jessica Yaniv rabbit hole?
It's
that what's happening?
Well,
it took a lot for people to finally call Yaniv out, and it's disgusting how far we had to go for that person to be called out, because at the end of the day, that person was a predator, even if they were trans or not. And of course it's been called into question whether or not they were trans in the first place.
They're assholes in every fraction of society.
Exactly. And the fact that people will refuse to call out others just because they like them or they think they're hot, that shit is not acceptable, and I'm so sick of seeing it. I really am. Some of the worst people I've met in my entire life were from the community, and they just got a pass for it, and that's not okay. And you see this breaking down of tribalism. You see people calling each other out, and I think among other things, that is one of the most what's the word? It's good to see, because people have started calling out people for not calling out people, and it's like, you can't really
Right.
hide anymore.
Why are you
Yeah.
letting this slide kind of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
It's funny how that we are so much stuck in, if I might say, semantics of the argument, that we have stopped looking at the harm, the actual harm that might be happening. For example, that we are still like in society, some people are so stuck up about trans people or people who are, transforming from one gender to another, or the homosexuality, that they don't realize that there's violence against transgender people, that there's domestic abuse in homosexual relationships also, and there's that shit also going on in the background. So we are so stuck on the superficial part of all of it that we can't really get to the real harm that's being going on out there, and this is a disservice that's happening to the actual victims, actually.
Well, I mean,
in my opinion.
Well, imagine this to be on the guy's side on this one is like, imagine being a gay man and you're in an abusive relationship with your male partner.
Yeah.
And for one, there's no resources really for you because, you're a man. And two, people in, like, maybe people on your own political aisle don't want to touch it with a 1,000-foot pole because they think if they say that, oh, well, there's abuse in this relationship, that you're giving credence to the Christian, the fundamentalists who say that the relationships can't work.
Yeah.
People are
and
so
then there's the
busy
whole...
focusing on the fact that someone else is being, not abused, but
or
the fact that
being
somebody else is being
homophobic.
oppressed.
You're gonna get attacked
that they
for
just
being
let
homophobic,
them get away with it.
Yeah. And people don't want to call out because there's like a mob, like we lost him. Oh god, we lost the SJW mob,
Mr. Brass.
the SJW mob that can show up if you say something they don't like. So if you say, oh, this homophobic relationship, these two specific people, there's abuse going on, and the SJWs get a hold of this and are like, how dare you say this gay person is abusive? You don't know anything. And it's just like, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help. Kawasa for 10 said, well, if it ain't my favorite fellow troll as the guest seat, ... And also Pup gets a boop. Boop.
Yay, boopity boop.
He's been booped.
Yeah. So, I mean, another thing is, like, I believe, we go into, like, when it comes to abuse of men, is that a typical thing that I found that many female, like, the abuse that men and women do to each other, I've always liked to say that it's an abuse of an advantage that they have. Where men that I find that are abusive to women, they abuse a natural advantage that they might have over their partner, like their strength, and they're physically abusive. Whereas with women, I find that when they abuse their male partner, they're using their own advantage, like, which might be their emotional strength, and they use their emotions as a way to really damage a man. Now, of course, there are exceptions either way. I don't care how big of a man you are. If a woman comes at you with a frying pan and is hitting you on the head, you're getting hurt. But
Oh yeah. Do not, hell, it doesn't even have to be anything. If somebody has a weapon and you do not, the odds are you're going to get injured somehow in some way.
Even a gentle works sometimes. Yeah. And that can hurt. That shit can hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's how, when it comes to relationships, and many times I've found that, like in my own experience as being an abuse victim myself, that my abuser used my own chivalry against me. Because, for example, and this is, I actually talked to other men that are been abused, and they notice the same thing with me, is where they'll say, where a woman will be hitting a man, and she'll be really going at him and say, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to hit me? Because they know that the man has been trained, from literally the time he could understand a command, to don't hit a woman.
Yeah, I don't like that. I absolutely do not like that phrase in particular. That I file under toxic masculinity. It's not, it should never be don't hit a woman. It should be don't hit people except in extreme circumstances. Do you need to defend yourself? Then you can hit somebody. But no, don't hit a woman is bullshit. Your gender has nothing to do with it.
If you have one group of people where they believe that they can abuse you with impunity because there's a social rule to it that they can't hit you back.
Yeah.
Then that's going to be abused.
I think your what was it? Generalization of men being physically abusive and women being more emotionally abusive runs into a different problem, though. I think that has less to do with whether or not men are stronger or not, and more the victims that they're more likely to find. Does that make sense? So essentially what I'm trying to say is that it's not that the man is more likely to be physically abusive. It's just easier for a man to find a woman who he can bully around with his weight versus a woman who's not going to be it's not as easy for her to find a man that she's going to be able to use her weight around in the same way. Right?
Yeah, both genders are known to
do all the
emotionally abuse.
It's almost all of the above. And one thing that I have noticed is that most abuse tends to start with emotional abuse. It doesn't start off with somebody hitting you. It escalates.
That's where the boundaries are pushed first.
Yeah,
the desensitization starts happening.
Right, it escalates to that. And so maybe what you're seeing is more often men do not recognize that abuse until it escalates to physical violence.
Yeah. I mean,
that's just a lack of education, by the way. That's not like men are dumb. That is straight up just a lack of education. Because women are more and more, nowadays, far more educated about how to recognize abuse. And good.
I think so.
Everybody should be.
They have an advantage there, actually. That's how they're able to... women who abuse, they know how to work the system. I think so. There was this case in Australia where this woman, for I don't know however long years, kept on creating these stories about the ex stalking her and stuff when it wasn't the case, and it just took one female officer to come in and just look into the all the evidence out there with an unbiased perspective, and she immediately knew that the woman was lying. But
which is why it's good to have men and women and everybody you can have access to on something like the police force or an investigation or it's good to have diverse
the male investigator, however, went by this policy of believe whatever comes out of the woman's mouth.
Well, that's what we're seeing with the Johnny Depp case. That judge.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it goes into
wrong.
I mean, it goes into like how the Duluth model. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that sort of.
What was that again? Which model?
It's called the Duluth model.
DELUTH?
Yeah, I think so.
I got it.
Yeah.
DULUTH. Got
it. Yeah, give us a brief rundown. What is that?
I mean, it's a model that is frequently used by the police in order to handle domestic abuse.
Is this an American thing, or is this like a little bit more out there?
It's just an American thing. I don't know how they do it in the UK, but
gotcha.
Generally the Duluth model, goes by physical attributes in order to know who to arrest.
Oh,
okay. I found something else.
That's bizarre. Philosopher 5 says men suffer from social pride issues too. Many are afraid to admit they're being abused by women. Yep, and a boop for Buck. Boop.
Boopity boop.
I mean, and we were talking about this beforehand about, male disposability.
Right, we didn't get to that, so please.
And this is in my own experience where men are pretty much conditioned from a young age to make themselves disposable. And by, taking on ridiculously dangerous tasks, whether it be working, and to me, what we don't really see in many societies, we don't really hear talk about, is that society is pretty much desensitized to the notion of men being in pain. Because, I mean, I actually looked, a good measure I found is when you look at movies, for example, of horror movies especially, they actually did some studies on this, but if you look at the most cases, most of the people that are getting killed in horror movies are men.
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing when it comes to media in this regard. I'm not entirely sure I totally understand about what you're saying about disposability yet, so we can come back to that. But when it comes to...
Can maybe contribute a little bit to that, yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
for
later.
Sure. When it comes to media, you run into two problems. Well, you run into a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems. We'll talk about that. But the two I'm talking about right now is you run into this issue where violence towards women is played for, like, either weirdly downplayed or weirdly overplayed. So there's only like 2 or 3 movies in existence that are American movies where a woman gets shot in the head. But women get shot in the head... Or sorry, that women get shot in the head doesn't happen, but men get shot in the head, like, all the time. But then you have, like, these, like, horrifically depicted rape scenes, and it's like...
Oh, yeah.
What? Why? Why is this a thing? And it's bizarre. But then you've also got, like, the trope, the action hero trope, where he just gets, like, slashed across the face and he's like, I feel nothing. It's like...
Yeah. Well, I mean,
man,
you also have the same...
Bollywood movies, the old Bollywood movies, yeah, that trope, yeah.
Oh, hold on, I want to hear what... Nikki, what was that? What were you gonna say?
Yeah.
Oh, sometimes you also see that in books, too. There's a lot of really disgusting, self-inserted, like, rape scenes and stuff. But then you also get to the other side of that, too.
Well, that's bad for everybody. That's bad for everyone. Exactly. And it's like, it doesn't mean that... It doesn't mean you don't have rape in your story or in your movie or whatever, but it needs to be a better purpose. Like, it needs to be for a reason, not just, a bad thing happened to a woman to piss off the male character so he can have some character growth. Like, hello?
That's
please?
In media, women are used... Yeah, women are used as character growth. They're not their own people. They don't have their own aspirations. They're literally
which isn't good for men either, because
it's
not good for men to have that view of women, but it's also not good for women to have that view of men. That that's not good for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean,
so like this, if I may add this, where the woman, a man is like all like cold-hearted and aloof from the world, but then this sunshine of a woman comes into his life and everything changes, and he's like now a good person and he's like outgoing and everything, and vice versa. Like, they're used as objects for character growth.
Rom-coms are the worst.
Both the genders
are. God.
Yeah. Like, there's this woman who used to wear glasses and used to have like frizzy hair and stuff, and now there's a guy who comes in her life and she's like motivated to be like, look beautiful by societal standards and stuff, so she like goes for a makeover and stuff. Hey, look, she's all sexy and hot and blah 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 blah.
And all of her problems were solved that day. So go ahead, Mr. Brass. What were you gonna say?
I mean, it is definitely funny, like how that does play out with it. But I mean, I find some women use that to sort of their advantage in some cases, because. Think about it. If you see yourself as an object, then it's very hard for you to consider yourself an agent that's responsible for anything.
Yeah.
Sure. There are women who will definitely like shirk responsibility or not own up to any. They're the perpetual victim, even though they're the ones who are they're the abuser in this case. Who do we know that? I think we know somebody who might fall under that.
Well, it's actually interesting that you'd bring up rom-coms, because I read this opinion piece, and it says men don't like rom-coms like women do, because the man is expected to do all these weird, crazy stuff, like
Pursue
give
the
up
woman.
their families for the women, quit their jobs, move cities, and
Really?
all of
Isn't it the
this.
other way around?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Okay.
I mean, most of the time in a lot of rom-coms that are popular, you see the man sacrificing so much of their lives to work with women.
I have a couple.
And then-
I have a couple of like guilty pleasure rom-coms that I absolutely love. One of the worst ones is You've Got Mail. Everybody in that movie is an asshole. Everybody. That's one of the reasons why I like it. I watch it and I'm like, everybody here is shit. Everybody's garbage.
The bar is so low.
But I also really, really liked Kate and Leopold. Kate and Leopold has such an interesting dynamic of characters that it's just like, so this woman lives above her ex-boyfriend and he finds a time hole and he just jumps into it and then Leopold from the past comes back to the future.
Oh god.
And then he stays there forever with his.
And the
No,
time,
no,
the
he
time
doesn't
is
give up
standing in
anything.
a corner is like, am I a
Meg
fucking
Ryan goes back and lives in the past with him instead. So none of the men give up anything, but she gives up her life for him in that case. But she was kind of unhappy anyway, so
Yeah, it's
nobody
shown
loses.
a lot in
Oh, what?
Bollywood movies too.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought
No,
that
no,
he
she
came.
goes.
I
yeah,
haven't
she
watched
goes
that
back
movie
in.
in like 15 years. Don't judge me.
No, she they don't show any. That would have been I would love to see a goddamn sequel. I would love to see a movie about her trying to adjust to living in his time period and like their actual relationship, because you don't get to see the actual relationship.
I mean, let's be honest.
We
Though.
got
What
off
woman
topic.
would want to go back in that time where they had no rights?
Right?
Childbirth was like 70%. You probably died.
Yeah, all badsies. So we were talking
No,
about
Cholera. Uh-oh.
We were
And
talking
if
about.
you're a man, and if you're a man, that the king can arrange for you to fight in a war for him for just any reason.
Well, to be fair, she was getting with Leopold though. She wasn't getting with Joe Schmo. He was like,
To be fair.
like a decorated, like he's in that top 1% you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that you will notice with like self-insert or like romanticism of a time period. People aren't talking about the time period. You're talking about a romanticized version of that time period. You're not talking about, I'm a coal miner. Right?
The
Right?
reality.
Like, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So we were talking about male disposability, and
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure I understood what you were starting with by saying... Yeah, let's go back to that, because I want to make sure I understand.
I don't know if Brass wants to maybe say something about that, then I will chip in later. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, male disposability is basically, if you want the simplified version of it, it's basically the notion that a man's life is worth less than the woman's life. Where basically if, like a common thing we hear about, a common example of this is, on the Titanic, where,
Women and
the
children
boats go
first, yeah.
Children first.
women and children go first. That's an example of it. But you also see it in war as well, and they say, hey, you can kill all the men in this town, but don't you kill the women and children in
Because
there.
women are property, number one.
Yeah.
Women
At that
are
point in
considered
time,
property.
yeah.
And number two, they reproduce. So
Yeah.
there's that thing also. So they're valuable property, which can give you more people to put in the workforce or into slavery, whatever you want to put
There
it.
was also
So that's why.
there's also this
Also-
idea that having men you'd be more likely to deal with insurgents, whereas the women were going to be docile and not do anything to you, because what were they going to do?
Yeah.
They're women.
Yeah.
Cultural societies, everyone. Yeah. So if I can do a follow up on that.
Well, that and there was no, in honor cultures especially, there was no honor in killing the women or
Right, because the
children.
women
Oh,
were
yeah.
property.
Kill the woman? Really? How dishonorable
But at the end of the
you.
day, the women are still considered to be property that makes babies. Property that
it's-
you can take advantage of sexually, physically, that type of stuff. men were disposable, but women were still property to make babies. Their entire
it's
lives
weird.
were
So
just
it's
that.
it's women were valued.
Yep.
Yeah, it's weird. So they were devalued in different ways. So you had men who
Yes.
weren't as useful as people, but women who weren't viewed as people at all, but still worth something, the equivalent of money. Or land,
money,
or a
something,
cow.
yeah.
Money and
That's
sexual
why
pleasure
marriage,
as well.
the concept of marriage came in, because so that property could be passed down from one family to another in a way, without bloodshed. If I may add to that, for example, I work in occupational health and safety. Men are told to suck up sometimes
That's not good.
in their roles, whatever job they're doing. When we start talking about providing more tools and providing the environment for people, which include men too, to work safely, there are people who say, pish posh, because, well, it's common sense, and man up or suck it up, and it's generally for men. And also, the women are told, oh, this job is not for you, this is for men. Again, the disposability part, whereas the armed services before were only exclusively available to men, but now they're available for women too. So I was told when I was a child by my father, when I said I want to be an air pilot, and he was like, oh no, that's not for girls. And I was like, so and till last year he tried to get me married by saying, oh well, who's going to take forward the name of the family? And I'm like, I'm not taking the name of the family, your name. It's the guy's family's name that I'm going to be taking forward by giving birth to his child or something like that. So yeah.
Your family name sounds like a you problem.
Pardon? Sorry?
I said your family name sounds like a you problem. Better start pumping out another kid.
Yeah, I mean that is funny about how that does work. I mean I think that goes into I think that's called patrilinear, or how they. I mean, I can't remember how they say it. Patrilinear.
Technically, also it's the same. I'm going to be carrying out the genes of my husband, like whatever genes my husband has. I won't be carrying out any genes from my family or from my mother's side, if I might say. So genetically, also, it's kind of provable.
Well,
so yeah.
Another funny thing that people don't really take into consideration is that while you guys did make an interesting point about the women being sexual property, which I do admit that is a big problem. But
it's not a competition, right? It's shitty for everybody. This is bad for everybody. It's not like, women are more important because we're persecuted more. Like, no, it's shit for everybody. It's bad for everyone.
Yeah.
All the men get killed, and all the women get to have a bad time until they die. Yay!
I wanted to just say about when it came to sexual property that it also came down to one little thing that it also. Since women were called sexual property, the idea that a woman could sexually abuse a man was just absurd.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Because
it's still to this day the idea.
Well, there's unless it's a trope.
This way, I like to say like this way. Imagine if someone said your TV forced you to watch it. You would find that notion to be absurd.
I mean, people do that on social media. People will be like, I had to watch Steve.
Yeah, but I mean, people would think that, it's an absurd notion because it's an object. It can't force you to do anything.
Right.
And that's sort of that's what, people, that's how I see what the women being a sexual object thing says. Well, a woman can't force you to have sex. She's your sexual property. So.
Or you get the other way, which is, oh well, you probably liked it.
Yeah, which is bullshit.
Rape apologetics.
Yeah, especially when with underage male children.
Yes, that's where it's really bad.
Oh, this was the becoming an adult moment for them, isn't it? It's considered that way. It's considered they should consider that moment as something as of a trophy. They acquired a trophy
it's
rather than
perpetuated.
they were abused.
It's perpetuated on children too. Also, right on to young boys.
It's a conquest for men.
I was
something that
I was
happens
told I
to
can't be a
women.
pilot.
Well, it's also like it's something that gets taught into them sometimes from a really young age, and I think a lot of parents don't
Yeah.
realize they've done it, where they like see their kid looking at an older woman, like, and I mean like from really really young. I'm saying like a toddler, a 3-year-old is like
Oh, yeah.
looking over at a woman because they've, I don't know, don't see another one besides their mom before, and they're just looking, and the dad's like, look at that little sport ad.
Yeah.
He's already
He's
encouraging.
going to be a gamer. He's going to be a ladies' man.
Right, and then
Oh my
like,
God.
and then
Don't even
people-
talk to me about the straights and boyfriend girlfriend with their 3-year-old
Oh,
the
children.
women are,
God.
and
And
the
then-
women are supposed to be
then
like,
they're 5 and
oh,
they're
she's
doing
going
it,
to
and
be a
they're
beautiful
6 and
girl.
they're
Men
doing
are going
it.
to run after her.
And
Oh,
it just
God.
Imagine this
perpetuates.
way is like, I talk about the sexual abuse that goes on in public schools.
Oh God,
And-
yep.
For instance, you'll have a story about a 30-year-old female teacher that has sexual relationship with a 12-year-old
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
and they'll say, and no one in the article wants to say that this is statutory rape. They don't want to call the
Yeah.
woman a rapist.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
a pedophile.
And then the responses are like, oh, I wish I was that boy, and it's like you're just
Yeah, when I was
you're
that
literally
age, I would have wanted
re-victimizing
that.
this child who was manipulated and abused by an older woman. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
What?
shit,
If I may,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of, it goes into these conversations we have about transgender people also, how they are perpetuated, especially
Mhm.
men who transition to women. They're perpetuated as predators because they are viewed as men and not women anymore.
They're also viewed as
they're always
objects.
viewed as men.
They're also viewed as
Yeah.
sexual objects because they're assumed to have the, like, quote-unquote male sex drive, so therefore they want to fuck all
Yeah.
the time.
So
And it's like, no, they're a
what they-
person! Stop!
Yeah. What they don't realize is, irregardless of the gender,
Mm-hmm.
any child is in danger of abuse in a toilet. Any toilet, male, female, doesn't matter.
oh yeah,
So to try and say that transgenders can't access the toilets of their respective genders cause they are possibly predators, but it's not brought up when women transition to male. It's always brought up when male are transitioned to women, because
Well, I mean,
however you can take it, you get the gist what I'm trying to say, right?
Well, yeah.
Because men
like I
are
said-
supposed to be the stronger people in the perpetuators of crime. Women can't be, like Mr. Brass said here, right?
I mean, another thing that goes into another problem, another funny thing I've noticed with trans people as well, where, I mean, we always talk about how we have to protect women from men in these sports, but I'm saying I've never heard once say that we have to protect men from women in long distance swimming, even though women in marathon swimming, because women on average tend to do better than men in marathon swimming.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
yeah. Try to stay
So,
away from that
I've
topic.
I've never heard say, we need to protect men from women. It's always,
Yeah, these the cross-channel
It's always-
marathons and stuff. Yeah, we have mixed teams who have performed a lot better than either the male team. They have performed better than the pure male teams or pure female teams. Yeah, so
In Canada,
So-
for the Olympics, when it comes to hockey, so if any of you have ever seen women's hockey, watch it. It barely gets televised, but oh my god, they are savage, and they're so
Oh my
good.
God.
And so when the Olympics come around, the
Yeah.
men and the
you want
women,
to start a war with the Canadian, just say that their hockey team sucks.
you just have to find out which hockey team they're going for, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Well,
that's
that
what-
and female rugby players too. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
So what happens when the Olympics
Female
come
soccer
around?
players.
Yep.
Oh.
So what happens?
Male soccer players be what's the word, when they fake throw themselves,
Oh yeah.
flopping.
Yeah.
They'll be flopping everywhere, but a female soccer player will have their nose broken. They're like, no, I'm fine, it's fine, let's play.
yeah,
There's,
I,
um,
yeah, I can vouch for that.
so
That's
cool.
happened to me,
What-
and I'm just like, give me a handkerchief, and my coach is like, fucking use your sleeve.
I'm not getting you a handkerchief.
Rub
use your
some dirt in
sleeve.
it.
Like,
When what happens in the Olympics is the women's hockey team and the male hockey team play together. And so they do intramural where they've got both on each side, and then they'll play against each other, and it's like a toss up who's gonna win. It's not like they're like, oh, the men are so much better. But the thing is the men have a lot more opportunity to be better because of how much the NHL is televised and how much money they make and how much money is invested into their training. If you were to invest in their training, into the women's training, a closer to equal amount, I would watch the hell out of women's hockey. They're so good.
People
They're
keep
so fun to
saying
watch.
when it comes to equal pay and stuff, oh well, women's sport is not that popular. It just depends on the audience. The audience wants to watch men.
The audience aren't
do you
provided
know
a
how
choice.
much advertisement money and advertisement goes for male sports than female sports?
Okay.
Okay, but I think we are going on a tangent here.
We're getting we're off topic.
main topic.
But actually, that actually leads into something else. How much abuse goes on in male sports like football and in locker rooms and with coaches and with the women's gymnastics is apparently fucking awful. Yeah. I can only imagine how bad. I'm curious because the female stuff in gymnastics has only started coming out in the past couple of years. So if that's going on the women's side, and now what's going on with the men? Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing that goes into, I find male disposability in a way too, is that, for example, the NFL had a major problem with concussions. That's a big issue that they had.
Oh God, yeah.
Think about it this way. Imagine how, for many of these people, they've been dealing with concussion issues for decades, and they didn't come out about it.
Oh, they've been shoving it under the rug, shoving it under the rug, shoving it under the rug.
Yeah, but
I mean, there's that whole study that they did with men who have had multiple concussions, especially football players.
Football, yeah.
And they have a condition in their brains that makes them violent, or it damages some part of their brains in some way, and they're only just now doing the studies to try and figure out what's going on with it, how they can fix it, stuff like that. And it's just it's horrifying. Like, for example, there was a football player that was beating his wife, and then he passed away, and they did scans on his brain, or they dissected his brain after he died, and they found out that he had that. That's how they discovered it in the first place. So now they're trying to figure out how it manifests itself while these players are still alive, and there is barely
and the
any
NHL is trying to
going in for these people.
Well, the NHL is trying to curbtail it, right? The NHL is trying to actively stop investigations because they don't want. They're afraid of any changes happening to their game because they don't want to risk losing money. But if they were smart,
NFL
they
too.
would. Right. If
well,
they
imagine this way as well, is that these men, for many of these men had concussions while they were playing, and their coach just said, "Oh, that's fine, just keep playing." They know that they had concussion problems beforehand, but they just continually pushed them out and to continue playing, despite the fact they shouldn't have been.
Yeah, there's a whole
that
movie
does not fly in hockey
about the rampant downplaying of concussions and how much money they spent to not only subvert but shut down any studies done on concussions because they didn't want to take out their best players. And these men are literally dying. Meanwhile, and they don't give a shit because
they're trying to push.
That's not a man.
And they're trying to push
that's somebody that makes
teenagers.
them money, and they care more about the money than they do the human person.
And they're trying to push teenagers into these sports, and they're basically bribing them and taking advantage of them, because that happens more to men than it does to women, because that opportunity for women doesn't exist as much. So so men are stuck in these situations where they're spending their entire career in college being forced to let their grades slip, even though they're like, oh no, they have to maintain this, to lack having this education while they're forced to play with no benefit. None. Zero. They get nothing.
Yeah, no injury benefits. Yeah.
No injury
Also,
benefits, no pay. They don't get the a percentage of
time
their
off,
own merch.
no recovery period.
They basically get sold. They're basically
All the while,
they sign on, and
all
they're
the while,
underage
these
when they
colleges
sign
are
these
making literally
contracts.
millions of dollars off of these
Right.
young
like,
men.
And they never tell you about, like, for example, they never tell you about the case that where you'll have some colleges that they're so dedicated to football and stuff like that that they pass these players who obviously should be failing.
Yep.
And they don't. Like, they had one football player that came out about it, and they found out that even though he was in college and he had all that, he could only read on a sixth to 8th grade level because they paid him. I mean, they basically just they just kept passing him, even though he shouldn't have been passing.
Right, and the argument is that but they're getting a scholarship to get free education, but they're not getting the education.
Yeah.
They're not achieving that basic level that they need for.
It's a con.
Yeah. Also, it's funny like how like the disposability of men comes into play here. If a player gets injured and he decides they need time for recovery, one, their pay is uncertain whether they will get anything while they're on their time off and in recovery, and two is the organization that they have been playing for, whether they support that recovery time and that all that money that will go in that recovery process, like the doctor's appointments and your physiotherapy and all that stuff. Plus,
being an athlete is so difficult.
Policy. This
being
is a
an
job.
athlete is so difficult.
Their return to work policy. They'll be like, well, I'll find someone else to do this job if you're not gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it goes into the supply and demand, where they'll tell these players that, they honestly should have been, like, they come back early from injuries, specifically because the coach says, well, you know how many people that would die to be in your position and play football?
Well, they manipulate them.
Team?
It's abuse.
Yes. So, you either come back right now or within a week or so, or we're just giving your spot to someone else.
Yep.
And we'll terminate your contract.
Yeah, and then what are they supposed to do about terminating the contract? They don't have the education to know dick all about anything.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. I can see that being a problem.
So they found out a common problem is that you'll have these men that they have 6th to 7th grade level able to read, like on a 6th to 8th, 7th grade level. They're beaten within a pulp because of all the football and stuff that they've been playing, and they get out after about a couple years of the NFL and they end up homeless.
And they have nothing.
Oh yeah.
And though they've been paid,
They have no
amount of
money management skills.
Well, that and they're
basically
encouraged to spend the money because of the culture. So the culture is, hey, you just won a game, go drop $7,000 on a night out
at a strip club. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's also funny. Like I know that there are management agencies who manage players, but how do they manage those players? It's like a different story, isn't it?
Speedy Smoke said, I heard scholarships can be dropped if you get injured. See, if you wanted colleges to actually give a shit about their players, that shouldn't be allowed, because you should want your players to be healthy and not risk losing the money on that scholarship, because let them finish their schooling, assholes, if that's the case. God damn.
I mean,
right.
Men are already, underrepresented in college as it is. Nowadays, it is. Men are...
Do you have the numbers on that? Are they?
Right? That doesn't sound correct at all. I've heard the exact opposite. I've heard only within this past year has the number gone up from 27% of women being in college.
I know women tend to get the degrees more than men do.
But 27% of, I think it's either women, it's either 27% of women go to college or graduate from college, or 27% of colleges are women. And that doesn't take into account the specialist ones that are basically 90%
So I'm picking
male.
college specifically, and so in 2018, in 2019, men were at 35.4%, and females were at 36.6%.
Yeah.
I remember, where women...
And that's completed, that's completed 4 years of college. That's finishing it.
I mean, I've heard that women are getting, they're getting the degrees, and men are falling behind in education nowadays.
Now, has that
maybe
fallen behind as an equalization, or has that fallen behind as in, like, women are getting a pass and men are not... Something's going on over here?
Well, I mean, yeah, I also like to remember, because there's a common misconception, like, for the longest time in American history, education was sort of a luxury that, unless you were either rich or you knew a guy, you didn't get education, whether you were man or women. I believe what skyrocketed men in order to where they got more education than women was with this thing called the GI Bill. Where basically men said, all right, look, you guys fought in a war, and we're going to compensate you for fighting in this war for us by giving you educational opportunities.
So this one is saying
well,
50...
that's another manipulation tactic, especially in America.
Sure.
Yeah.
If they were to get rid of tuition in colleges,
that would change
I feel
everything.
like the number of people going into the military would be far less, because they use those programs to recruit minorities who are trying to quote unquote get out of the hood, or basically just make a difference in their lives. It's to
take advantage of class. It's not so much.
Exactly.
It's not so much race. It's definitely like to take advantage of people who are young and who are unable to, who feel like at the very least that they're unable to do anything, and some of them are. So they're in a position where they're like, I'm from this town, I want to educate myself, I'm being told that the way to get out of the situation I'm in is through education, and the only way I can get an education is to join the army, right? And that's a class,
well, no, that's
definitely a class
like,
issue.
The recruiters in America, the recruiters have go specifically into lower
High
income
schools.
And again, it's not race, it's literally class, and
it's class that is unfairly
money
skewed towards specific races.
Yeah, exactly.
Because history.
Like, people literally, like, if you don't have good connections with your family, if your family if they don't have enough money to put you through college, they won't give you any money for college.
For university,
nobody will what's the word, lend to you, depending on like your family
education
situation
loans and
too.
stuff.
There was this whole thing
Google
that came out about it recently.
My Google search is showing that it used to be 58% were men, and today 56% are women. So it's balanced out.
But I was saying, a big reason why men used to have, like I said, back, I believe when the first feminists came out, it was actually pretty even between, because funny enough, the first feminists were a part of the middle class of their time.
Are you talking about second wave feminism, like the rights to vote and stuff?
First wave feminism.
Okay.
Many of the first wave feminism were part of the middle class of their day. Although I find it funny enough that people don't realize that many of the no, of course not all. Some of them did realize the hypocrisy of some of it, what some other of their day did, where many first wave feminists were racist.
Yeah.
Where they were
absolutely.
Yeah.
Where they were only promoting
many people of that
of
time period were racist.
Yeah, where they were only promoting, the empowerment of white women.
Well, that's the thing, though, is white women won the right to vote, and then black women. It was 1946 that white women were able to vote, and it wasn't until 1960 something that black women, or is that native?
I think so. New Zealand
that's
got the right
pathetic.
to vote way before than that.
The Athens 5 says,
America is so behind, but at the same time, the shit that the suffragettes had to go through was way worse than what American women had to go through. If you ever want to learn about some actual struggle, if you want to know about like some brutal, horrifying things that happened to women when they were trying to get the right to vote, read up about the suffragettes. Those were the ones in Britain, and their
I would
was
definitely recommend checking them out and then look at what's happened then in Europe, and then turn that and look towards what's going on in the Middle East right now. The Athens for 5 says, I don't remember the movie, but an entire film was made on the concussion/injuries that happened in football and the NFL, or a coach was denying them.
Yes.
I remember.
You know, and another
he's
thing
trying to take a nap, and I
watch
just keep poking him in the nose. He's so unimpressed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, whatever.
And, you know, what people fail to also realize is that men really didn't, per se, if you read the Constitution and you read how the rulers word how they did the laws and stuff back then, you'll realize that men didn't get the right to vote. They earned it by registering for the army.
Well, if they weren't landowners, yeah. So,
I mean, and many men that did fight for the army didn't have the right to vote. So you know, imagine how much angry that must get you, is that the fact that you're willing to die for your country, and they still say you can't vote.
Yeah, that's an issue with a good... there's still things that are going on right now that are like, wait, why are 16-year-olds getting taxed for working when they don't get to vote?
Exactly. And why aren't they allowed to vote when, especially in America, when the current government gets to borrow from the future coming generations?
Right. I'd be content with two
our
things.
Our birth rate is going down tremendously.
Well, yeah, it's gone down in Canada. One of the reasons why we're... it's not... The thing is that I think people put too much... People put a lot... Particularly when it comes to capitalism, people put a lot of... Their basket is focused on growth, when that needs to shift to maintained. It's not about getting bigger. We don't need a higher and higher and higher population. We don't need our population to go up. If our population goes down some... We'll be fine. It's okay, as we have our essentials that can be managed.
We have the automation industry taking over half the jobs anyway.
Exactly. We'll be fine. We'll manage.
Get upskilled.
Please just shift the idea of capitalism into maintained. That equal line, that equalization of like maximum profits don't equal maximum growth. Not the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, because here's how the thing goes, is that with a lot of our social programs where, you know, like, I believe, I can't remember which one of you said it, but, you know, the younger generation is paying for the older generation through their taxes, but the system as it currently is, if you have a low population of people, you know, that's going to become harder. They're facing that problem in Japan currently, where it's so bad there that there's actually more adult diapers than there are regular diapers for babies.
Yeah, there's a couple population problems. China's also going to be facing that if they're not already, because they kept killing all the women babies.
I mean, well, it's
the femicide that happened there.
It wouldn't be that a problem if they adjusted their social programs to taking that into account.
No, no. It's not their social programs that were the problem. The problem was the social pressure of having